we've got Mick Liubinskas, Natalie Isaacs, Ursula Hogben, and James Palmer. Now, before my introduction about Founder Institute, I'd just like to quickly run through tonight's agenda with everyone. After the short intro about Founder Institute, we are going to begin our panel discussion, and we're going to aim to wrap up the formal part of discussion around 6:50. So Founder Institute is the world's largest pre-seed startup accelerator. Now, we started in 2011 in America. Globally, we've helped 6,000 plus founders to launch their companies across 95 countries around the world. And we have in total assisted in raising over $1 billion in funding. We have a great team of directors. So we have Ben Chong, myself, my colleague Paul Krajewski, and Chris Clark. So together we have a very good collection of skill sets and experience, ranging from product, growth, and investment. Also, we have networks of local experts to support pre-seed entrepreneurs in building traction and funding, a devoted and global support network, not just the local directors and local collection of 262 mentors we have, but also the global network of mentors and supporters. You'll be able to tap into that resource as well. We put everybody through a structured growth process. And after you graduate the program, it doesn't finish there. We also keep giving you the support that you need. We start with the vision validation and move on to customer development, then revenue, and so forth. And while you are reading through this, just bear in mind, we are going through an update of the curriculum at the moment. So once you enroll, you will see a slight change with certain topics, but the main structure stays the same. The 14-week program you just saw, it fits into this FI roadmap, the most left box, the FI core program. So after the core program, you can choose to move on to Founder Lab, then eventually to FI Venture Network for the ease of access to funding. A sneak peek of the companies, a selection of them that graduated from different regions of Founder Institute chapters and which ones have got acquired. So you might recognize some of the Asia, Australia companies, maybe Chatbox, GoFar. We have a new program coming up in March. And why is it so exciting? Because it's the first time we offer a climate track. So our mission for the next program Founder Institute that starts in March is to challenge 1,000 founders in Australia and New Zealand to build enduring companies that solve the world's biggest problems, while finding and implementing solutions to address climate change. So if you are thinking to start your own company, so now is the time to act, because our application process has already started. So on the 26th of Feb is the final admission deadline. On the 7th of March, we will start the program. So this is actually the announcement I'm going to make and about the Tech Startup Weekend, which I will talk a bit more about after we finish the panel discussion tonight.
Yeah, thanks. Great to be here. What a great crew. Really excited with so much good activity happening. Climate Salad is 18 months old, and we established ourselves as with the view that there was a new industry being formed, sitting between technology, entrepreneurship, and climate sustainability in the environment, and that was going to have a lot of challenges. And the more we helped it, the more we are likely to have an environment that doesn't completely suck. And as a dad of 3 kids, that's really, really important to me. And this is my attempt at being slightly useful in that process, not being a chemist, biologist, or nuclear physicist. So we started basically just bringing the industry together, and then we've been layering on that different parts of value for the founders who are our focus. And so they help each other a lot. We have a lot of webinars and a lot of tools. And last year, we launched our first batch of programs, including the international trade mission to the US. And this year, we're launching a program as well with a focus on those companies that are on the cusp of going global. So really particular focused on entering new markets, but with a combination of obviously US, Asia, and Europe. And that's a big part of what we'll be doing this year. We're just growing the team out with Audrey in Melbourne, and Stefan Knight has just joined us as well to build out these programs, joining Olivia and Charlotte, who've done a great job growing out this community. So 250 companies, about 800 people in the community, a lot of good mentors and investors, and yeah, we think that the industry needs to get 4 or 5 times bigger. I think there's plenty of room for much more programs. And I think there's 50 years of growth in this space to do important work. So yeah, really excited to be here, and great to see such good momentum.
Thank you, Phoebe, and thank you for having me tonight. Yes, so I am the founder of 1 Million Women, and we are a movement of women and girls, a global movement, and we are actually 1 million women across all of our social media channels. And our whole reason for being is to empower women to live climate action through everything we do, right through from how we live to using our voice to influencing others, and to influencing politically. So I started it back in 2009, so not such a startup now, but I did think that we'd get to 1 million women in 6 months from launching, and it took 10 years. So it really is. It's a tough subject, climate change, but I. Yeah, so that's where we're at. And last year I launched my second book, and it's called Right Here, Right Now, and how we respond to the, how women can lead in this climate emergency. And it is really all about how, that this is the decade that counts for climate action, and what we can do as women and in this decade. And so that's been keeping me busy. I've been on a book tour and did 6 places last year, and keeping that going this year. But at 1 Million Women, we have been really over the last year digging deep in, really focusing on what can we do as a movement of women over these next couple of years. What is the biggest impact that we can make? And we're launching a new campaign very soon, really in the next month, and it's called I'm Ready. And it is about focusing on 3 key areas: getting politically engaged, electrifying our homes, and being economically powerful through the way that we spend and invest our money, and all about climate action, of course. So that is our commitment of work over the next 2 years.
Thanks, Phoebe, and really glad to be on this great panel, and thank you to everyone who's joining us online as well. In one way, I'm an example of, just a person with no climate science background who got really, look, I was always aware of climate issues, but the urgency and the speed only really came to the forefront of my mind a few years ago. And then I thought, well, what can I do? What needs to be done? And in that, what can I do? Which is where I ended up doing 3 things that are complementary but different. So first is, my background's 20 years of corporate law and capital raising. So I've continued to use those skills and just applied them to climate solutions companies specifically. So legals and capital raising for climate solutions companies, everything from a few $100,000 to 10 million plus, because it's a bit of a gap in that early stage legal support and capital raising support. And I thought, look, that's somewhere that I can be really useful. And I just love hearing founders' innovations and helping them, scale them. But there were 2 other things I could see needed urgent assistance, and I thought I could possibly do something useful there. So second, many everyday Australians say, well, what can I do? So I joined Australian Parents for Climate Action as a director, because it sets out all these practical things that everyday Australians can do, particularly to help influence your council, your state government and your federal government to get on with climate solutions. It's got nearly 20,000 members. It's become this really great source of simple answers to what can I do in terms of political influence. And then last is practical. So co-founded a local group that's part of the Beyond Zero Emissions overall group. And that answers what can I do in terms of practical solutions. So we launched in 2019, held 90 free events since then. And it's how to get solar, how to electrify your home, how to switch your super, and electric vehicle expos, because they are great fun. So that's the different things I'm doing, and that's why, but with a particular focus on helping climate solutions companies grow and scale.
Thanks, Phoebe. And look, I'm humbled to be a part of this panel who, alongside a bunch of people who have done far more for climate than I have, certainly in my career. But look, Blackbird is ultimately here to invest in the most ambitious founders across Australia and New Zealand. As Phoebe's rightly pointed out, we are no longer just a software investor, as was the case in our early beginnings, and we do look to invest in founders who are trying to solve some of the toughest problems that we face on the earth, and climate is one of those fruitful categories where there are a myriad of deep technical business capital formation challenges that need to be solved in order to really have a good crack at solving some of these nasty problems. So look, we have two funds both set up across Australia and New Zealand to invest at the earliest of stages, and then a much larger follow-on fund which is there to invest all the way across the capital journeys of any of these companies focused on some of these really hard problems. Personally, I've taken a real personal interest in climate focused companies, mostly because they have to solve really intriguing problems, and I'm just a curious soul. I'm a finance guy by background who loves learning about new things and breaking down industries, and climate is not short of interesting problems to be solved. In terms of how Blackbird or some of the programs that we're running at the moment, we're actually currently taking new signups for our Giants program. Giants is an awesome initiative where we offer early stage companies support and mentorship from both operators, specialists, investors within the early stage ecosystem, free of charge. So check out our website at blackbird.vc, or if you're looking for investment, reach out to me directly via email or LinkedIn. But really excited to chat today.
We've got to attack on all fronts and try all things. Like I knew it wasn't good, and the only thing I'm learning from a Masters of Sustainable Development is that it's worse than not good and getting worse. And we're trying to change everything. But so I think we absolutely have got a tremendous amount of tools already. If you listen to Saul Griffith, we can electrify. I just got an induction stove on the weekend, and we get into EVs. Like, we can go a long way with what we've got, but probably not as far enough. Like, we've got to. And we're going to have to reduce emissions, remove emissions, adapt, and try to get our heads around this new thing. This very old thing that we haven't cared about enough, which is the natural assets of the world. And so my view is, I think we've got to do a ton of research on moonshots, which might never ever work. We've got to deploy more things at scale. And I think the startup opportunity is those 10x things in the middle, like these whole new industries around every part of it, measuring it, understanding it, at the home, in the work, in government, across the earth, a just transition for the world. Like, there's just every product is touched a little bit, and some massively, and that's going to take ingenuity, innovation, risk taking, technology, product, capital, teams. Like, it's a job for crazy startup entrepreneurs. So yeah.
Look, maybe I could just quickly tell you my story with how I started 1 Million Women, because I've only had two jobs in my life, really. I founded 1 Million Women about 13 years ago. And before that, I founded my own cosmetics company, and I ran it for 24 years. And I think that with neither, I really thought, yes, I started them from scratch and from this deep desire and passion to want to make a difference, but very different lives, And I did not really understand climate change. I certainly didn't get the point on climate change until really late. And but I got my electricity consumption down by 20%. And when I saw that I had saved a heap of pollution and a heap of money, it was actually in that moment that I took ownership of the issue of climate change. And I realized that as one person and as part of a collective, I was really powerful, if I could just do that without knowing very much about anything to do with climate change. Yet I got my electricity bill down. And that is what propelled me to start 1 Million Women and to give away, to say goodbye to my cosmetics company, which was all about waste and overpackaging. And I think that when you start something, I wished I had known what I know now. I wished I'd known it back then when I had started my cosmetics company, but there you go. But with 1 Million Women, I was able to, with a lot of other people, shape that vision from day one. And startups are much more nimble. So you have this such an amazing opportunity to really take it somewhere. And I think that, yeah, not all startups make it. And but if you've got an idea and you're passionate about something, like I was about wanting to tell the world what I had just done with my electricity bill, and maybe if I could get 1 million women to do that too, we would really make a difference. And I think that if you've got that idea and you've got that passion, you have a real opportunity to make it happen. Yes, you may not succeed, but yes, you might.
Phoebe, I'm happy to add a couple of quick points to the kind of 2 excellent focuses that Mick and Natalie have just given. To limit global warming to 1.5 degrees, which is one, incredibly important, and second, looking quite unachievable. But just to put it in perspective on a 1.5 degree goal, we need to decarbonise by 15%, and in 2021 it was 0.5%. That's on the one hand. On the other hand, we know that about 100 key companies account for about 70% of greenhouse gas emissions. And why are both of these relevant? Because we need, as Mick said, significant change across many sectors. So you've got government, you've got personal, and you've got business, including startups. And one incredible source of innovation on doing things differently and being innovative is startups. So that's why startups are so important, because we need so much innovation and so much swift change. But then also one takeaway I hope everyone takes from this is startups are people, and every one of us can work and do more in climate. And we can also do things personally that collectively add up massively. So if anyone feels powerless, look at what everyone voting does, and then think about what that looks like across people's work and across people boycotting fossil fuel companies on a mass scale and trying to shift to other solutions.
I would just really reiterate what everyone else has said. Startups tend to be the primary mechanism of real change within markets. The old boys aren't going to innovate away. They have, decades and decades of entrenched and embedded incentive structures that aren't going to disappear anytime soon. We've seen sort of shades of that improving with some of the stuff around ESG and a little bit of carbon offsetting stuff, but it's a drop in the ocean relative to what's necessary. So look, I view startups as kind of the only mechanism that'll get us where we need to go to within this within this climate challenge. And there are just a myriad of important problems. As Ursula outlined, there are a small number of companies, but companies that produce incredibly important goods and services that allow the broader economic environment to function at scale. And consumers don't change their habits all that quickly. It would be lovely if we could habit change our way to solving this problem, but I feel like that's an unlikely outcome. So startups who can really shift the dial on these markets is really where I think the biggest impact is going to come from.
So 1 Million Women, we are a not-for-profit women's movement that act on climate change through the way that we live, through the actions that we take every day. And James, I just wanted to mention, this conversation has changed over, yes, it's slow, consumer habits, it is slow. That's what I was, I thought, how hard could this be? I'm sure I'll be at 1 million women in 6 months, but changing the way that you live is incredibly difficult. And it's difficult because we're trying to do it, in this structured framework of our high consumption society. But this conversation, I know 1 Million Women is probably a skewed audience because when women join 1 Million Women, they want to make a difference. But I have seen this conversation change over the years. Women are savvy. Women are looking at products and services that are transparent with their supply chain. They want to know they're looking at product labels, and they're really supporting those brands and services that are doing good things for the planet. And yes, I wish it was faster, but it is definitely moving in the right direction. And we talk about the externalities at 1 Million Women. We talk about the product and what comes with that product and where it's from, and is there a transparent supply chain anywhere on the label. And when we put up posts about supply chains and what's in the product and those externalities, we get a lot of engagement, we get a lot of shares, we get a lot of comments. And so I think that conversation has truly shifted. And I think that, when I look at some of the brands that support 1 Million Women, and as we were talking about earlier, like Polestar and the EV Polestar that we just did a raffle on, and they are a passionate company wanting to, they're transparent with the supply chain. They want to make the first carbon neutral car by 2030. And there are so many brands out there like them doing everything possible to make a difference. So yes, I just wanted to make that point.
We can't just go through and incrementally reduce. We have to do things significantly differently as well. The main sources of emissions, so supply chain emissions are actually significantly higher than a company's operational emissions. They're kind of between 5 and 10 times higher, depending on which report you look at and which industry. So what it takes to package and transport things from manufacture, package, transport, these are some of the emissions we're talking about. So manufacturing differently, reuse, recycling is a last resort. Introduction of tariffs or taxes on carbon intensive products, making things local, change the laws around repair and waste. And then for us, we've got to remember our power, because I do get concerned when people talk about, say personal solutions don't do much, but en masse, they're massive. If we en masse significantly reduce our purchasing and significantly make different choices, it does make a difference as well. And that locally is looking like by far less buy local.
Yeah, I think that's really important. And it also goes to every single startup, as you said, Phoebe, like every single startup has a role to play here, because you're the most flexible to change your behavior. You've got the most future. You have the less infrastructure and bureaucracy to untie. I actually think we can't get to a climate positive future without taking the big companies on the journey too. Like, this is not like Blockbuster where we, they get made redundant and they're gone. We just don't have time to do that. But the big utility company, we need to bring them along the journey. But startups just have this really, all startups, I guess, just have much more flexibility to be able to be better across all the SDGs, to be much more diverse, to be much more principle centered. So I think all companies need to really, really be aware of that. And it goes to the point Ursula raised as well, which is Absolutely, no individual person is totally and utterly responsible for climate change, but everybody is responsible for their own actions, and that creates systemic change, like by voting. Like every big business now faces pressure from investors, from policy, which is through voting, from customers, and from employees. Like that is a ton of pressure, and it's really legitimately changing those companies. And you have the potential as a startup just to start with that inbuilt into your company, and that's an incredible opportunity. And I think you'll have bonus opportunities to grow. Like there's a ton of capital I see now which may not be absolutely focused on climate, but will not do climate negative investments. Won't invest in e-commerce or fast fashion or these things which are belonging all the things Ursula talked about. Like it's touching a little bit of everything. So I'll just ask the question, and it's hard to run a startup. I know I've done it many times, but this is also important to do because you might be building into a direction that's going to get stuck if you don't actually think about what's your climate impacts.
I think also it is this thing of on everybody's CV, we should say climate activist, because I think so many of us go, oh, well, I'm not a climate scientist, or I'm not a climate activist, or the product that I'm producing has nothing to do with climate. I'll leave it to the environmentalists. I'll leave it to those who are acting on climate change to do it. And if all of us can just, integrate climate action into everything we're doing, whether it's starting up a business, whether it's how you live, whatever it is, it's then part of who we are and not an adjunct to it.
Spot on that. It's like the taco advert, soft shell, hard shell, why not do both? Like, don't be put off the small things just because there are a whole lot of really big things to get involved in as well.
I think offsetting early in a early stage startup's life cycle is perhaps unlikely. In most cases, startups are incredibly resource constrained, and they need to be careful about where they focus the resources that they do have. In the case that you're a little more mature and in a more financially stable position to offset or pursue a carbon zero footprint, there are a few things you should be careful of. I guess one is the underlying quality of the offsets that you are looking for, and drawing the distinction between carbon removal and carbon offsetting. So the offsetting of negative emissions or carbon sucking up assets. And so a couple of companies are, and then also the other thing I look at, there are myriad opportunities around carbon removal. There are a couple of really incredible companies doing stuff in the DAC space, augmenting capital formation models in between some DAC for a DAC sort of technology modalities. So companies I'd encourage you to look at within that space is Earthshot. They're doing really great work in terms of building what is a more verifiable and trustworthy carbon offset environment, and also Capture 6, who are a company focused on carbon removal. So if you want to sort of upskill in that area. And then the other company I'd sort of highlight within this space who are doing amazing things is Stripe. They've recently announced a $1 billion advanced market commitment, which is effectively a mechanism of, I guess, sproiking new direct air capture or carbon removal technologies by effectively purchasing offsets in advance. So if you are operating within the offset or carbon removal space, then they're a great organization to talk to in the context of building a demand pipeline for the carbon removal that you may be able to create at some point in time. So, and it's sort of alternative funding mechanism.
We certainly can't rely on offsets. Like that's like, hey, we've been behaving really badly, let's just pay some money and everything will be okay. Like there's just no way. Like, and I agree, it's a shit show at the moment, but I think we've got to work through that shit show to get to an industry that actually understands it and works at it, like to get to integrity. The same thing is, I think greenwashing sucks, but I think it's a part of the 10-step process to become actually a genuinely good company. So we've got to do a lot of other things. Like you just can't do it. Absolutely can't do we can't go, oh, we'll just keep mining and putting out coal and driving our cars and be like, it's okay, we'll just offset and plant some trees. Like we've got to do that and 45 other things. But yeah. And I totally agree, James. It's about really, really investigate the quality of it.
couldn't agree with you more, because so we don't really talk about offsetting at all with when we're showing programs or showing people how to live. We really focus on every single bit of CO2 that we can prevent from going into the atmosphere is what matters, and that's the lane that we stay in. And to your point, Mick, I think, you know, there is a lot of greenwashing out there, and where companies just think, yep, well, I'll just push that we offset and not change any of our manufacturing processes or our structure, and that will be okay. And it's like, you know, I'll always say to our community, you can't just march in the streets, and you can't just give to, you know, sign a petition or send a letter to a politician. And I mean, we have to do all of that, of course, but you can't just do that and think, I've ticked a box, now I can live my life and overconsume because I've done this thing on one side, and so I can consume on the other. And that's really the same with offsetting. So, because we say you just got to do it all, you have to live climate action, you've got to fight for it too, and so you've got to reduce your carbon emissions to the lowest possible before you even think about offsetting from the perspective of how you live.
Wholeheartedly agree with everyone. The first thing, even when someone talks about offsets, is I lead with exactly what everyone else has gone with, reducing emissions first. Simple analogy, the bath is overflowing. Are you going to be scooping it out with a teaspoon? Turn off the tap. We've got to focus on turning off the tap. How are we going to get there faster? The solutions exist. Project Drawdown is a great resource for evidence-based solutions we have right now to reduce the carbon in the atmosphere. How are we going to accelerate this? Once again, government, business and community. One of the leading things that government can do is around carbon pricing and tariffs. There is and also disclosure. So we know disclosure and or pricing and or tariffs are all coming. This is a significant issue for every Australian business, but the significant benefit is it will accelerate CO2 reduction and then offsets where needed. One good thing about offset money is it is accelerating solutions, including climate tech solutions, as well as the actual CO2 that's being reduced. You know, one of the benefits I see to offset money is we're exploring all kinds of solutions: reforestation, controlled burning, alternative seaweed. These are projects I'm citing that are all happening in Australia. And by piloting these, they can then go to scale. But key message, reduce first. Offset is only for what we can't reduce.
I guess I'll start and actually use employee engagement, because I think this is one of the great tools that founders have at their disposal, is being able to unify great people behind a vision that actually inspires people. You know, it's not that inspiring to work for Microsoft or an oil and gas or a mining company these days, but it can be really inspiring, and it's a great mechanism of capturing wonderful talent, is you know, to paint and stand behind a vision for the future that people are inspired by. And so I would always, you know, when you are operating in a market like climate tech, and can sort of mobilize people behind a vision, it's incredibly powerful. And as I think Mick referenced earlier in the call, all of these companies are just a function of the great people behind them. So it's an incredibly valuable and important thing to focus on as you sort of beginning your journey to really stand behind and spend some time creating that sort of vision statement and building an employee brand behind it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. When I started 1 Million Women, I literally grew through an employee engagement program. We had Kingwood Mallisons who have changed, but Kingwood Mallisons at the time, KPMG, Telstra, like some really, and lots of, you know, SMEs as well. And to see, like, yes, 1 million women grew because of it, but to see the empowerment of women and also the men too, because, you know, it was inclusive of men, it was men getting their women engaged, and it was, you know, the strategies to reduce emissions at work, whether that be food waste or electricity or paper waste, or, you know, taking strategies to employers, or the employers themselves are doing it. But it was a catalyst for change. And I think that, you know, that feeling proud about where you work and aligning with your values is so important. In fact, I'm ready that our new campaign is going to be an employee engagement program as well. So it's vital. It's vital for the acceleration that we need for climate action. And then my only other point would be is to stay on track. And it's one lesson that I learned from Natalie, which was my cosmetics company. I went off track so many times, and I went off track. I was, you know, department stores would want a brand and I'd go off and do it. And then instead of sticking to the one thing that I really loved, which is the very original brand that I created, instead of sticking to that, I just kept going sideways, kept getting pulled all different ways, and I lost my purpose. And it's one lesson that I've really brought with me with me at 1 Million Women, is to really try to know your identity, know your purpose, and stay on track.
Nat and I didn't collaborate beforehand. My notes on this point are hope and purpose. I'm going to give my 2 strongest suggestions for employee engagement. First is tell them your carbon footprint issues and involve them in innovative solutions. Most people understand to some degree, you know, that we have serious climate issues. Give people ways to be practically involved in your company. Give them ways to be part of the solution and to see that this company is trying to do things significantly differently and better. And second, assist them with home solutions projects. The stuff you can do personally that's really impactful is also tedious. Switching your super, electrifying your home, cooking, your air conditioning, your hot water, and then even switching your transport. It's actually fairly time consuming and fairly tedious, but it's also on the flip side really easy to support in practice. So support your employees to do things at home as well. It's that same thing. The big picture things we do to reduce CO2 at the government and corporate level are incredibly important, but personal solutions are both impactful and fill you with hope and purpose. So do those too. My
addition to that is to regularly reconnect with nature. It sounds like something we should all do, but as a part of the long list of my privileges, I'm in an area with lots of trees and I get to experience it, but not everyone does. And sometimes getting busy on a startup, you're in front of a computer, on a mobile phone, earbuds in on Zoom calls. There's a massive positive influence of everybody reconnecting with nature. It produces our oxygen, sequesters carbon in the ocean, it produces our food, and the more we all connect. So I think taking time, you can have a great offsite sitting in front of a whiteboard, and I'd love nothing more than a whiteboard marker, but I do. I'm going to love trees more, right? So just whenever you get a chance to include that into the normal habit of your own life and in the life of your companies and encourage it, like you'll see incredible returns on that. So that's my wild idea. The reality is that the RNDG grant and MDG grants are great for all companies, including climate-specific grants. Obviously, there's none federally yet because they're just getting going, but there are some coming, I think, in the next 6 months. And you've got to check in with your state. Each state has lots of good programs. We've got good support from Victoria, Queensland, New South Wales, South Australia already. So check in your state governments, but connect in with your networks, the Founder Institutes, Fish Burners, Stone and Chalks. Yeah, they've got great connections into those partners. But yeah, definitely we've seen a few come through Climate Salad, but most of them are it's still pretty new, right? This whole industry is fairly new, so don't expect the government to be in the forefront of that, but hopefully coming soon.
For anyone who is sitting here tonight, who is thinking to start your own startup company, or simply you like the idea of startup, you wonder if you can join a team, a startup weekend can be a great place to go, because during the 2.5 days, you will get support from many mentors on customer validation, on building MVP, on how to build your pitch to investors. You can scan it and will take you to the Humanitic site to register to this event. And a little gift for everybody who's still here, make sure you use the discount code FI. So F for founder, I for institute, founder institute, FI as a discount code. You can get a half price ticket. So the half price is only $12.50. It's nearly nothing. So make sure, if you like to, learn to build startup or to just know more about starting a company, come and join us 17th to 19th of February.